Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Azure App Service. We have a really exciting show today. We're going to be talking about all things Java, and I have with me James Faulkner from Red Hat, as well as Philip Hayes and Denver from the App Service team. Philip also from Red Hat. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and then we'll get on with the show.
Sure, I'll start. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having us on the show, Byron. So my name is James Faulkner. I run product and technical marketing for Red Hat. Red Hat Runtime is part of our application development portfolio, and JBoss is part of that portfolio. So, and with me today also is Philip. Philip Hayes, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, James. Yeah, so my name is Philip Hayes. I'm part of James's team. I'm also part of the runtimes unit, and my focus really has been around EAP on cloud providers and so on. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Philip. Denver.
Hey everyone, I'm Denver Britton. I work with Byron on the app service side of things, but specifically on the Java end of things as far as Java on app service is concerned. Not just Red Hat, but all Java on app service.
Thank you, Denver. Okay, so the usual format of the show is I talk about a couple of the things that are new and upcoming, and then we'll dive deep into the topic today, which is JBoss and Java. So without further ado, there's one feature that I want to highlight today, which is we added this ability to undelete applications. This is something that has existed for in-app service in the API, and we have some CLI support for it, but everybody kept asking about having some UI support for it. So the place where we have integrated it is in the browse. So when you go take a look at all of your apps, there's this option now to manage deleted applications. And what this will do is it will let you select a subscription. This is my unique problem for working at Microsoft. I have like 87 Azure subscriptions. And then from here, I can see the history of the apps that I have deleted over the last, I'm going off of memory here, but I think it's like 30 days. If you've deleted an app for more than 30 days, it just kind of like clears out of the system. But if it's been less than 30 days, you can go in and you can recover this application. And what this will do is it will basically ask you what app service plan do you want to use, and it will let you restore it to a slot, right? So you can have an app, you can restore it to a slot, and then you can also restore the configuration. So it's content and configuration that you can choose to restore. And from there, because you have it in slot, you can test, validate without it being, publicly available in the URL that you would normally expect. And from there, you can swap into production. So we do have, even though you can protect applications, you can mark them so that they're not deletable. Errors happen and people delete stuff that they don't want to. But now we have a very easy way for you to restore these things. The other service announcement is a reminder that if you're using app service environments V1 or V2, we want to encourage you to migrate to V3. You get a better price per performance, and all of the new features and all of the new exciting stuff that is coming to the platform is on the app service environments V3 version of the service. So if you want to be running Linux stuff, if you want to have the auto scale and the faster scale, all of that features are coming into app service environments V3. We have a great migration experience. You do need to, and you end up having to create the app service environment V3 and then moving your apps into that because of the advanced networking configurations. There's usually some manual steps that you need to follow, but the wizard guides you step by step all the way through. If you have questions about that, we will have links in the docs. We will have links in the Twitter feed. Actually, there was a tweet yesterday that basically goes over all of that, but I'll highlight it again. And if you need a reminder, this is our Twitter account where you can find us and get all the latest, greatest. This is managed by the team. This is not a marketing Twitter account. This is where we're putting like real technical content. It's also not a support channel, so we will direct you to support if you're having production issues. But to keep up with the service, ask questions, stuff like that. That's a good way to reach directly into the product team. Okay, that's my spiel. So we can switch over and talk. Let's talk some Java. So James, do you want to talk it through?
Thanks, Byron. I'm no longer offended when I'm being called a marketing person. But I am a developer. I come from a development background. I spent a number of years at Sun Microsystems, Oracle, and now at Red Hat. So so what I want to talk about today is JBoss EAP on Azure App Service. So if you're not familiar, JBoss EAP is our flagship Jakarta EE implementation. It implements the Jakarta EE 10 standard. Or will implement it in the next version, which is coming out later this year. But it also implements things like microprofile and a number of other components. We have a lot of customers on JBoss EAP from the past 2 decades since Java itself and Java EE at the time was introduced. Customers have been running tons of apps, running them successfully, and now they're all trying to shut down their data centers and then move to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought it'd be a great idea to partner with Microsoft, given our strong partnership in other areas of the portfolio, and of course in Microsoft's strength in Java and Red Hat's track record in the Java community. So it's a great partnership that we wanted to make this product available as easy as possible to consume, and that meant Azure App Service. So we were very happy. We've been working with Microsoft for the last 2 years to make this reality. So just a few slides on what it is, and then we'll actually get into a demo. I see you smiling, Byron.
Yeah, I was going to say, James, do you think there's ever going to be a time where Microsoft shows up at a Java conference and people are not surprised?
Yeah, I don't know. It can generally take some time. It's kind of funny you mentioned that. When I first showed up at a Linux conference talking about Java, they were like, "What are you doing here? Like, why aren't you talking about Red Hat Enterprise Linux?" But anyways, yeah, it takes time, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
So
funny enough, we also have Java sessions during Microsoft Build.
Yeah.
And people are surprised about that, but I want to share something just to kind of like ground this a little bit. So this is the Jakarta EE starter page, right? This is where people that want to learn more about this, here's where they come. And when you click here on start, you're going to be generating a project, and lo and behold, the official Jakarta EE is hosted on App Service EAP. So that's how deep the rabbit hole goes. We've been working together. We want to enable Java developers to have the best experience that they can and do more with App Service, and that's basically, I think, where we're going, right? So I'll switch it over to your slides and stop interrupting.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for reminding me. So it's not just JBoss EAP; it's also Tomcat. It's microprofile apps. It's Java SE apps. They're all supported on Azure App Service, which is awesome, as well as a number of different developer environments. You can see IntelliJ there, VS Code, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of Java works here, and it's a fantastic home for your Java applications. And we'll talk more about what that is. So you can certainly deploy Java apps, including JBoss, to App Service. You can also link it to things like on-premise resources through Azure Express Route. There's a number of different options for serving content, like Azure Front Door. You can cluster. You can add, Azure Database. You can even add things like Azure Message Bus to support your traditional messaging requirements. So it's a great platform to land Java apps and then connect them to the rest of your services and other Azure services that you may be able to take advantage of. But beyond just connecting to services, right, there's traditional use cases for enterprise Java, things like scaling and fault tolerance and high availability. And we also have support for that for JBoss EAP on Azure App Service, which we'll talk about in a few more slides. But it's a very easy and turnkey way to take existing Java applications or net new Java applications and run them on a hosted environment. And you don't have to worry about all the patching of the operating system, the patching of the app server. You just have to worry about your business logic and your bits. So it's fantastic. Also, the next question is, okay, it's easy to deploy. What about management? What do I do on day 2 when something doesn't seem to be working correctly, this is where monitoring comes in. So Azure App Service has a number of different supports a number of different interfaces for doing monitoring, a number of different third-party applications and frameworks. JBoss EAP is no different. JBoss EAP can export and does export metrics that are compatible with things like Azure App Insights, or if you're using a third party like Datadog or some other system, that's also integratable with your applications running on Azure App Service, which is like probably, you've heard the euphemism like 90% of the cost of software is in maintenance and in support, right? And that's absolutely continues to be true today. So having these like day two operations is really critical. Also, as I mentioned, HA clustering. So we now have clustering support. Byron, do you want to mention this is a new thing?
Yeah, so this is, something that we've been working at, and a scenario that was enabled because of the work that the team was doing with JBoss, which is this is the first time that we're enabling inter-instance communication, right? So today, if you have any other type of application and you need one instance to talk to another, it basically needs to go through the internet. It's not like instance to instance within the local network. And with the JBoss clustering feature, that is the first time that we're enabling that on the platform. And you want to talk about why that's important, James?
Yeah, sure. So JBoss has been around, as I said, for 2 decades. Early on, clustering was important. It was done very manually and very error prone, especially when you had high latency between the different nodes. So with App Service, with the instance-to-instance communication that Byron mentioned, the latency is super low, and clusters it's very easy to form clusters. It's also very easy based on the JBoss technology to like scale it out and scale it in as necessary. So we've worked with the Microsoft team to add of this capability, making sure to cover a lot of those corner cases. If a thing doesn't cleanly shut down, what happens? Those kinds of things. So we make use of like Azure file storage to maintain the state of the cluster, and then as members come up and go down, it's added to that state. So we kind of have a consistent state throughout the life cycle of the app, no matter if it's scaled manually or auto scaling,
right?
Which you can do as well.
Yeah, and that reminds me of there's a theme these days, which there's customers that are at different stages of their cloud journey. Like you said, they're exiting their data centers and they're trying to find a way to get the most out of the cloud. And we see some people that have basically just gone from having VMs in the data center to having VMs on Azure, and you're just basically paying a different person for the hardware, right? There's not a lot of value that gets added there. But when you go to a fully managed platform, you start adding value just for the fact that it's being hosted there. And then the next theme is how can you modernize the patterns of the application? And one thing that we want to enable the apps to come as they are, right? So if you're doing clustering today, keep doing clustering. It is there for you. But the platform also enables you to move to a place where the state is fully externalized and you can take full advantage of going to 100 instances, right? If you want. So that's where we talk about lightweight modernization. So starting to use some of the platform features to add value to your existing applications without having to do a full rewrite.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We have customers all around that journey, and like you said, lifting and shifting a VM from VMware on premise to Azure in the cloud, you do get some benefit, but definitely the managed part is really what a lot of our customers are looking to essentially get out of the business of, and that's what App Service brings. So it's fantastic to see. Speaking of our partnership, so as I said, we've been working for a couple of years, actually more than a couple of years with Microsoft. This solution, EAP on Azure App Service, is, as far as I know, the only Jakarta EE managed service integrated and supported by a major cloud provider as well as the vendor. So in this case, Microsoft and Red Hat have teamed up in terms of support. So if you're using EAP on Azure App Service, you find a bug or you have a question, you can submit a ticket or call Microsoft or Red Hat, and we're not going to pass you off between and point fingers at each other. We're going to work behind the scenes to resolve it, and then you, as the customer, get sort of that single throat to choke, to use the
Mhm.
horrible cliched phrase. But this is true not just for EAP, but also for other things like Red Hat Enterprise Linux and some of our other offerings, OpenShift as well. So we're very happy, and this is really important to our customers and to anyone looking to run production apps on a cloud provider with a managed EAP or managed Jakarta EE offering. This is like really critical for being able to get that sign off from upper management. Okay, just a couple more slides and we'll get to the demo. So the next question is, okay, well, I'm not running EAP today, but I'm running things like WebLogic, for example, from our friends at Oracle. And so how do I get to EAP on app service? So we do have tooling. We have a migration toolkit for applications. It basically scans your source code and tells you line by line, like, what do you need to change? Like, here's a proprietary API you're using. Here's the equivalent in Jakarta EE or in JBoss EAP. If there's no equivalent in the standard, and it kind of assigns different what we call story points to basically give you an idea of how hard a migration of an application is going to be. And so you can, this is easy to run. It's easy to run across, tens or hundreds or even thousands of applications at once and get a relative ranking of which apps are really hard and you need to, hire some senior developer to migrate versus the apps that are really easy to migrate. So and we actually, Microsoft actually contributed and continues to contribute rule sets to this tool that are Azure specific. So you're going to find, it's not just going to talk about hard coded IP addresses. It's going to talk about like Azure Message Bus as a replacement for your embedded message queue. So it's very powerful and very well integrated with Azure.
And there's kind of like three parts to this migration story, right? One is inventory of applications. How do I even know what I need to migrate? And for that, Denver, help me out. There's the Azure Migration Assistant. Is that the product that I'm thinking about?
Yep, Azure Migration Assistant is a great tool for that.
So that's just to create an inventory of what the hell I need to move. Then the next one is, okay, so are my apps ready to migrate, right? And that's where the migration toolkit and similar stuff help you say, okay, out of the 100 apps that I discovered, there's this 10 that are just ready to go. Then there's this other 50 that I need to do some small tweaks. And then there's these other ones that are like in the dark ages that I probably need to rewrite.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then the other thing that goes in hand with that is this landing hub accelerators. So you might be a Java expert and you know how to manage your cluster locally and all of that stuff, but how does that translate to Azure? And how do you create it knowing that you're following the best practices? And that's what those templates are for you. They're basically allowing you to create the resources, the infrastructure for your application. We're not talking code. This is just the Azure resources that are going to provide the infra for your environment in a best practice, secure by default, and repeatable manner. So this is something that you can run through Azure CLI, or I think there's also our bicep templates, which are scriptable, repeatable templates that let you create these environments with a couple commands. And again, Denver, I need your help here. There's also Terraform.
Yes, there's also Terraform, and there's an even easier, since it is all open source templates.
Right.
There's even a deploy to Azure button that you can just click and use some pre-baked templates for.
Right. And the awesome thing about that is you can fork the repo, and if you need to tweak something for your specific requirements, you can. And you have that infrastructure as code that just saves you a bunch of time and effort. And you know that you're getting the best practices out of the box. You don't need to go research how do you inject something in a VNet so that it's locked down behind that. The template is there.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and speaking of getting hands-on, we actually have this QR code you see is a link to a video from JDConf last year where we did a full sort of hour-long demo showing the full migration steps you would take using the migration toolkit, migrating the application, linking it to a database on Azure App Service, and then applying some GitHub actions. And I think actually we also showed the use of app service environments and what it means to have an EAP app on the app service environment. So it's a pretty in-depth video. So if you're interested in a lot more details than what we're talking about today, follow that. Here's a couple of screenshots from the toolkit itself. You can see the line-by-line information with links to like useful documentation, a source tree that you can browse the different files in your source code, click on them, get information about what the toolkit found. So it's a very easy to browse thing. It can also generate machine readable output instead of this fancy HTML, but it can generate like a comma separated value showing you numbers and severity of the different things it found. So you can kind of use that in a automated CI pipeline, for example, if you want to detect issues early. Yeah, and there's some links. I think, Byron, you're going to include these links as well. This is just some of the documentation links for migrating applications to EAP on Azure App Service. So useful things there. But if you want to get hands-on, we also have a lab that you can run yourself. You do have to have an Azure account. We don't give you free Azure credits, unfortunately. But if you know someone who has a cousin who has some Azure passes, then you could use those. But it's designed to be about a 4 to 5 hour lab. You can run through it at your own pace, and it basically does the same thing. It shows you how to take an existing application, migrate it to EAP, deploy that to Azure App Service, connect it with your CI systems and GitHub Actions, and then deploy again to Azure App Service environments for those customers who want to have sort of a more isolated app service environment that they want to use. So It's a very, very useful and instructive. We also have a Microsoft Learn module that we've developed for JBoss and App Service as well, and those links will be provided in the tweet.
Yeah, we'll put them in our Twitter. Again, reminder just so that people already know what it is, but it's there. And then what I'm thinking is we're going to grab these slides and put them in a blog post in our App Service blog, and just so that people can find the slide deck and peruse through it at their own time.
Yeah, and actually click on the links instead of typing it in.
Yep.
Okay, last slide here, then we'll get to the demo. So just a few roadmap items, things that we're working on in the near future. So the first one is currently to use EAP on Azure App Service, you have to pay. And so we would like to have a free tier, which will obviously be limited to the Azure free tier limits, but it will help kickstart or kick the tires on projects and kind of get a feel of what it looks like to run EAP on App Service. We also have subscription portability. So historically, Red Hat, when we've sold EAP, we sell subscriptions. That's Red Hat's business model. But suppose you already bought a subscription and now you're looking to run it on App Service and like, do I have to double pay? So we want to make sure you can bring those subscriptions that you already have from Red Hat and apply them to EAP on Azure App Service. Also, in the UX discoverability improvements, a bunch of little things here. For example, we want to have like an Azure Marketplace entry for EAP on App Service. So it makes it easier to find. Right now, you have to know that it's in Azure App Service, go to Azure App Service and create a new app service. Selecting EAP on the little dropdown. Wouldn't it be great if we had a kind of a pre-baked solution on Azure Marketplace that would take you and configure app service for you for EAP? And then lastly, we're continuing to improve our documentation, adding more tips and tutorials, which, by the way, we're talking about EAP on App Service today. We also have EAP availability directly in Azure VMs through the Azure Marketplace and on Azure Red Hat OpenShift. So no matter whether you're using containers or whether you're using VMs or you're looking for a managed solution, we have you covered with EAP.
Exactly, and the free SKU. I need to talk about that. People don't realize we've had a free SKU of App Service for about 10 years, and I think there's a total of there's over 27 different Azure products that you can use for free that have a free tier. And you can build some, complicated solutions. You cannot run them at scale because there's limits. But if you're trying to figure something out, trying to test something out, put together a POC, the free SKU is usually enough. So that's why it's important to make sure that we enable JBoss EAP developers to come play in this playground for free. Check that their stuff is working, that they can basically use the tools and procedures that they're already familiar with. That's one of the very important things that we try to drive from from the product is if you're using Maven today, there's Maven integration. You can just continue using that tool. If you're using Jenkins, same thing. Like, you don't need to abandon your existing tools and processes to use App Service. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to enable.
That's great. Yeah, familiarity is awesome, especially when you're coming to a new service. So we have the same challenges as well. So okay, enough talk. Wow, that's a horrible image on the right. I don't know what happened there. I blame PowerPoint. Sorry.
Yep.
So I'm going to do a demo. I'm going to show you what it looks like to deploy EAP on App Service and kind of drive around a few of the features. We're not going to go deep dive, but we'll see what we can do here. So let me share my screen. I'm going to share this one here, I believe. Yes.
Okay, let me add it to the thing. There we go.
Okay, how's that look? Does it look good?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna take the screen to full screen. I think they all know what we look like.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Sure. Okay, so here on the Azure portal, as we said, this is JBoss EAP on Azure App Service. So to start, I'll click on App Services. I've already deployed one just to save time. It doesn't take very long. It takes maybe a minute to deploy a new app service. But what it looks like if you wanted to create a web app using JBoss EAP. So I'll just click Create here. You'll give it a name. I'll just call it Test Throw Away because I'm not going to actually do this. Just add some random thing at the end. I'm going to publish code. You can also, of course, publish containers or a static web app through App Service. But for JBoss EAP, I want to deploy an actual application. So lots of different stacks you can choose. We currently have support for 8 and 11, and 17 is coming, I believe. Byron, correct me if I'm wrong, but that should be coming in the next release of App Service. I know it's on the roadmap.
Denver, I need your help there. I think it's with ANT 100.
Yes, it should be with ANT 100.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the release that's currently in the pipeline. We're just waiting for it to get everywhere.
Yep. Okay, so but EAP supports 8, 11, and 17 as of today. So it'll be nice to get 17 support in there. Then by choosing that, I can now choose Red Hat JBoss EAP 7. So EAP 7 is our latest release. When a new version of EAP comes out, you're not going to get automatically upgraded. You can pin to the latest version of EAP and not get, not break your house because we've upgraded you to some random version of EAP. So don't worry about that. We intend to have support for both 7 and 8 for a while. So yeah, so that'll be good for customers who don't want to get silently failed.
Yeah, and from App Service side, what we usually do, you can find this. It's our published policy for stack support is we don't take stacks away. So even though JBoss EAP support ends at some point, your app will continue to run. You're just not getting the latest updates, right? So we do encourage you to move to the latest, greatest supported version, but the app won't just die.
Okay, so let me go on here. So I'm going to choose East. You can create a new plan. It's going to create one for me automatically. This is where you kind of choose the type of machine that you want. So in this case, we support Premium V3 and I believe V2 isolated. I'm not an expert on Azure, so
yeah. If you click Create New, for example, you should be able to see it from there. Yeah, just give it whatever name. If you can click Explore pricing plans, and we can talk a little bit about this as well. So one of the things that you're going to see there is that we support JBoss EAP on PV3, so Premium V3, as well as Isolated V2. Isolated V2 is the one that maps to App Service Environments V3. I know we're terrible at naming stuff. But you will also notice that we also have the new memory optimized SKUs. Those are the PMV3. So those are the ones that are there in the middle. So if you look at, for example, a P1 V3 versus a P1M V3, you see that the amount of memory is doubled. So if you have stuff that that are constrained on memory, take a look at the new memory optimized SKUs. The other scenario is you could have a little bit more app density where you probably don't need 2 cores to host all of your applications, but 8 gigabytes of memory was not enough. You can now cram them into a memory optimized SKU and just basically save money that way. Yeah, but I think that's enough of a segue.
Okay, I'm not going to go through each of these. I think as Azure
Yep.
experts, you're all familiar with these. So I'll kind of hit the specific things for EAP here. But there's GitHub enablement, which I'm going to do not now, but I'll do it in a moment. So I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to leave this alone. I'm going to enable public access. I'm going to not enable network injection because I don't know what that is and it sounds dangerous. And then I can also enable monitoring, which I normally do that to enable application insights. Yeah.
The network injection is the getting your app in a VNet.
Okay.
So when we were talking about the clustering option, you need to have your app in a VNet so they can talk to each other. And that's also a great reminder is today, when you create a JBoss app, it will be in clustering mode by default. And again, in the same release where we're talking that's coming in the pipeline, we will have a toggle in the UI that lets you opt in and out of that. So some customers don't want to have clustering enabled. You can turn it off. It will be on by default, but you can always turn it off.
Okay. So then the last one is the tags one. Everyone's familiar with this. I'm not going to create it because I've already created one. But when I do, if I were to click create, then I would end up with what I've deployed here, which is my running app store. I can actually click on it, and you get the kind of the default landing page saying yes, it's alive, showing you the JVM information as well as the JBoss EAP version. So all good. So within let me go back to the screen here. So within the kind of the landing page or resource page for my app service, there's lots of things I can do over here, which I'm going to not go to each and every one, but you can see, for example, App Insights. You'll start seeing data here once I deploy my application. And so JBoss EAP exports kind of default set of information like HTTP requests, data in and out, a few other, whether you have like 404s, things like that. If you write custom metrics, for example, with micrometer or with even OpenTelemetry, those will be exported and also consumed by App Insights, and then you can kind of build your rule sets and your monitoring and your alerting around those as well. So you can get application-specific insights. So that's very easy to do. You can also see, for example, logs. If you're a JBoss EAP administrator and you're deploying to Azure App Service, you'll see the familiar logs here, which it's got a bunch of stuff here. But you can actually download the logs if you want and see the full JBoss EAP log. So it's not like hidden, even though it is managed for you. You can see the full log, especially useful for debugging if you're writing an app and it's not behaving.
Yeah. Another reminder. The Logstream UI that you're seeing right now, there's going to be a new version of it coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be side by side, so we're not taking this one away. But it has some of the functionality that you mentioned, like the ability to just download the file.
Yeah,
it's
very
as well as streaming it.
Yep. You can also scale out, right? Byron mentioned we have clustering now, so I'm currently only running one instance. So technically, even though it is in clustering mode, there's only one node, so it's really not a cluster. You can kind of drag this manually and deploy lots of them, or you can do it automatic or write some specific rules if you want to, scale out based on the schedule or something like that.
Yeah, one of the top questions that I get asked when I go to a conference is how many instances do I need to use to run my app? And the answer is, I don't know.
It depends.
Yeah. So the cool thing about the automatic scaling is that it helps you answer that question. If you have no idea, the automatic scaling lets you think of it as what's this thing called? Adaptive cruise control, where you can say, I don't want to go any slower than 30 miles an hour, and I don't want to go any faster than 70. And let the platform make the decision, right? So what you're seeing here is I don't want to go up to more than 18 instances because I'm run out of money. But I know that I need at least 8 to always be running. And when you don't know what your scale requirements are, starting with something like this and monitoring over time helps you then go to the more advanced scenario, which is rules-based. The other interesting one that is not always clear is There's nothing scales faster than something that scales before the event happens. But the platform can't predict that. But if you know your business and you know that you're going to have a high traffic event on Tuesday at 7 p.m., you can set up rules based on schedule through the rules UI. So that's something to think about. It applies to every framework, not just JBoss, but anything that is hosted on app service, you can do the automatic scaling or the rules-based scaling if you're sophisticated.
Yeah, it's a very powerful feature. A lot of our customers, this is like awesome to them because they've been doing essentially either keeping 18 instances up all the time because they don't want to have to come in from on the weekend and scale, or they don't scale and then they run into issues later on when they get big loads. So fantastic feature, especially when you're coming from like on-prem to cloud. So really great capability. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is the integration with GitHub Actions. So within my app service here, I can come over to Deployment Center and basically link a GitHub repository to my app service deployment, such that every time I make a change in the repo, I can have it automatically deploy the new version. Obviously, you're not going to do this in production. You're going to have some gating, and you're probably going to want to use deployment slots to set up sort of staging and production. But you can also do things like generate on a pull request, generate a new deployment slot which runs the modified code, and someone can go in and then confirm that the fix is good, and then you can swap that that staging slot with the production slot very easily with a click of a button. It's a little more complicated, or it takes a little more steps than what I'm going to show here, but I'm going to just show you the basic deployment. So it supports more than GitHub. I'm going to go with GitHub. I have this this GitHub repo that I've created. This is the actual application that we use as part of the workshop. So if you do the workshop, you'll be, if you have done the workshop, you'll recognize this. It's a basic retail shopping site implemented in Jakarta EE and deployed to EAP. So this is my my repo. So if I come back here, I can simply declare that repo is the one I want. I've already signed into GitHub. If you haven't signed in, you'll see a sign in button. You can sign in through the normal process here. I'll select my personal organization, and then the repo should be Jakarta, should be somewhere in here, hopefully. Cool store. I click that. Here it is right here, Cool Store Jakarta EE. I'll just go with the main branch. So it's the only branch. Then it's going to kind of auto-detect this stuff and say, okay, you're running Java version 11 JBoss EAP. Here's the workflow. Here's the GitHub Action workflow file that I'm going to create for you. So you can kind of browse and see what it looks like. It's very simple. It basically sets up a Java VM. It runs Maven to build the application, and then it uploads it using credentials that it automatically generates for security purposes, tokens, so that it can, so the GitHub Action running on GitHub's infrastructure can push the app to app service. So
yeah, and the workflow files that you see here are produced and maintained by the team. So that's another way that you know that you're getting best practices just built into the product.
So as soon as I click save here, what it's going to do is actually push that GitHub workflow file into the repository, and you'll see that happen here momentarily. So I'll go back over to my my repo here, and you'll see this one right here, this one 5 seconds ago or whatever. So it created this workflow file that you just saw directly in the repository. The other thing it does is it kicks off the action because it made a change to the repository. So you can see this workflow run has now been queued, and now it just started. It's got two very simple steps, which is build and deploy. So it's probably going to take, this won't take too long to build it. This is a standard Java build with no caching. So, there's lots of optimizations that can be made here to cache using GitHub Actions. So you don't have to download the internet every time you want to build. But this is a pretty small file. So it looks like it's almost done already. And then it's going to, so that's already finished. So the build step completed successfully. Basically the output is a WAR file. A web archive, and so that web archive is now going to be deployed from GitHub Actions into Azure App Service. This is not the only way to deploy a WAR file. You can deploy it from the Azure CLI. You can deploy it from Maven. You can deploy it from VS Code or any of the supported IDEs that have Azure deployment or Azure App Service support. And so lots of, depending on your workflow and how you work as a developer, you can choose the best path for you. This is pretty easy just because it's easy to demo and easy to understand. And it kind of sets you down a path of sort of that infrastructure as code. If you haven't gone down that path, this is a very instructful way to see it in a very, very simple way. So the deployment is in progress. This won't take more than a few more seconds here. Yeah. Byron, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just going to say that the cool thing here is that the moment that you do another commit on this branch, it will kick up the workflow again, and it will go and it will update the app. If you're, we usually recommend staging slots for production. That way, you can have those evergreen environment where you always have the latest, greatest stuff, and combine it with a feature which is, for example, traffic splitting, where you can say 1% of your traffic can go to your staging slot, and that's a really good way of validating that you're actually having the right bits before you even start a swap.
Yeah, we actually explore that in the workshop as well. In app service environments, we set up staging slots, and we manage the traffic between them. So if we wait here long enough, you'll see the log output of actually deploying the application into EAP. But there it goes.
So what's happening right now is the WAR file gets pushed into the app service. App service detects that there's a new app. There's some restarts that are happening. These are all the stuff that you avoid by having the staging slot, right? You right now, for the purpose of the demo, this is great because we can see everything happening as it happens. But in general, you want to avoid having all of these events happening in the live traffic version of your app. And staging slots are there for that reason.
Absolutely, 100%. Okay, so it looks like it's done. So this is the landing page that we had open when I first started. So the idea is if I reload this page, then we should see our new application. And it might take a minute because, as Byron mentioned, there's a couple resorts that happen. Let me just click on the domain here. We'll just give it a moment here. It can take a little bit of time depending on the magic of Azure. Yep. But it will eventually show up here. Actually, I'll take a look at the log file just to make sure that everything kind of got deployed successfully.
Okay, while that's going on, I'm going to segue a little bit to Denver. We can keep this on the screen and it'll come up in a minute. But we've basically been talking explicitly about JBoss and the integration that we have and the relationship between Red Hat. But that's just one of the flavors of Java that's out there, right? So how about if I have a micro-profile app or a Tomcat app? And Denver, I'm hoping you can help us answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Byron. I know James mentioned it earlier, but anything Java, realistically, Java SE, Tomcat, micro-profile, anything you can get a fat jar or a jar from, you should be able to run on app service and take advantage of all the PaaS features that we went over here with this JBoss demo.
And we have similar story for migration, right? Especially around Tomcat, where you can go do the discovery with Azure Migrate. We have a bunch of rules that helps you detect what are the changes that you would need to do to your application. And then we have the landing zone accelerators that gives you those infrastructure as code scripts that you can just instantiate and then do your deployment. And I think the other key thing that sometimes gets missed is the fact that you don't have to change the way that you're working. You can use the tools that you're already familiar with. I think you saw it in the demos where we're using GitHub and we're using Maven. So it should feel natural to a Java developer. I think we have plugins for Eclipse, IntelliJ, all of that stuff. You can be in the environment that you use today and just target Azure. Okay, coming back to you, James. Do you want to give it a refresh, see if we get it live?
Yeah. Where's my tab here? Yeah, for some reason it has not deployed. I don't know quite what's going on here. It normally comes up by now.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those where we didn't feed the demo gods, and we're paying the price. But you can watch this on the longer end-to-end video that you have, where it basically goes step by step, and you can try it out by yourself by just all you need to do is fork that repo that you showed, right? And
Yep.
basically
Or
at that point,
yeah, you can fork that repo. But you could, in fact, I could even try to build it manually, but I think we're probably over time by now. Yeah, so just fork the repo. It's a standard Jakarta EE application, uses like EJBs and a few other typical things you find in a Jakarta EE application. And it ends up, you build a WAR file and then you can deploy it with, like, as I said, Azure CLI or anything like that. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for being with us. Do you have any closing remarks you want to leave the audience with?
Not much. I mean, as I said, JBoss EAP has been around for a long time. Our goal with partnering with Microsoft is to make that available across the different usages and across the different use cases of our customers. And so, we're very pleased that Microsoft has been so easy to work with, and Azure App Service in particular is a really great solution for our customers. So yeah, happy to be here, and again, happy for you having us here.
Well, thank you very much, James. Denver, anything from you?
I think you guys covered it pretty well, but yeah, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And then from me, thank you guys for joining. We have the next version of the show is probably going to be August 3rd. Still working on exactly what we're going to do there. It could go in two directions. We're looking at doing a show that is just focused on perf, and some of the work that we've been doing with folks like, for example, the Redis cache team to enable things like the Web plus DB plus cache templates, and some of the improvements on application insights to help you pinpoint performance applications on your app. If that's something you want to hear more about, just ping us on Twitter. The other thing is we're working with Denver to see if we can get folks from MongoDB come talk about some of the stuff that we've been doing together. So it could go either way. It's going to be a surprise what ends up being the next one, but that's what we have on the works. And if you have a Java workload, we do all that we can to make sure that Java is the best place that Azure is the best place for your Java workloads, including JBoss. We do a lot of work on the platform side to make sure that every feature on the platform, you heard us talk about deployment slots, but also things like easy auth and all of the environment settings and keeping the environment up to date, so that you focus on your code and the code that only you can write, right? That's the key thing that we believe as a platform is we enable you to focus on the code that only you can write and get the most value out of your time. And that's kind of the story of App Service. Okay, I don't think I have anything else. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for being here for James, Phillips, and Denver. And we'll see you in the next show.
All right, thank you.